Welcome to The Truth is Simple. I'm Dave Corum, your host, and today is October 17th, 2023. It just happens to be my 61st birthday today. Hard to believe that I've been on this planet for 61 years, but hey, you know, with that comes a lot of truth and wisdom. So I hope to share some of that with you today. Last week, if you watched the end of episode 5, I think it was, I had talked about holidays today and how they've kind of changed and so forth and so on. I'm actually going to push that back, and we're going to do that probably on the 7th of November, which is the week that leads up to Veterans Day, which was called Armistice Day. So we're going to dig into that, holidays and so forth, how they've been modified and changed over the last 20 years or so, based upon our culture and how things in the United States has really changed. Today I wanted to talk about what's going on in Israel and with Hamas and so forth and so on. I know when I started this vlog 6 weeks ago now, that I had stated that this is going to be non-political. I still want to make it non-political, but there is just too many things happening, not just with Hamas, but have triggered things here in the United States that I think we need to discuss. And I think it's very important that you know the truth about these things. Of course, this is my truth. Your truth might be slightly different, but I'm going to ask you to really investigate and see what's going on around you. Back when China had the Olympics back a couple years back ago, I had made a comment that China would invade Taiwan. Well, they haven't done that yet, but I also made the comment that within a couple of weeks of the end of that event that Russia would invade Ukraine, and that one did happen. So I've been pretty good. Back in the 80s when back in the early 2008, 2009, 10, 11, when Obama was president, I had made quite a few comments on Facebook and MeWe, I think, back then, if it was still around. I think I did that then, but maybe it could have been a little bit later on MeWe. But was starting to post comments on Facebook, and I had a blog called Chatter. And on Chatter that I used to post some comments about what was going on. And I stopped that pretty quick, probably about midterm, second year, maybe towards the end of the second year of Obama's first presidency. And the reason was for that, because I knew that they were starting to, why, I don't know, that they were starting to he was starting to empower the FBI, the IRS, Department of Justice, and all these other governmental law enforcement agencies to go after conservatives. I was making some pretty good comments back then, so I thought, have a family, have kids. Do I really want this to fall upon me? Same thing we probably all go through our lives when we want to speak and we don't, and we stay silent, and we sit on our couch and watch TV and just stay out of politics. Well, I'm kind of done now. You can see it done 180 from those days to here. But I thought it's important that we look at those types of things, and so I made predictions back there that have come somewhat true. If you go back and you can find those. Nothing video-wise, it's all written material. Go back and find that. You'll find that I was pretty right on with a lot of the things, and I put that toward common sense. If you can take 2 and 2 and you can add those together, 2 and 2 makes 4. 2 and 2 does not make 3. It does not make 5. It does not make 8. 2 and 2 makes 4. And if you add those things, those circumstantial things that are happening around you, the truth will surface, and you will find out that you're mostly right. And then taking action is important. Otherwise, you just suffer the consequences of your lack of decision making and taking action towards preventing that from happening. For me, I'm 61. I got 20 years left. They locked me up in prison or whatever. So what? At least I get free health care and free food. And if I want to change my sex, I guess I could do that as well. But when we talk about what happened with Hamas attacking Israel, I think that was on October 8th, I think it was, with 1,000 roughly Israelis murdered, kids, women butchered, heads chopped off, pretty grotesque things. And you see our response here in the United States. Biden was right on top of it. I think he did a good job initially about supporting Israel and their cause and so forth. That was their 9/11. That was their Pearl Harbor. They have every right to go after Hamas. in the Gaza Strip, no matter where they are and anywhere in the country. It's like what we did when we went into Afghanistan after Al Qaeda, based upon 9/11. So Israel has every right to go after Hamas for what they did. But what really hit me, and I actually saw this coming, was the response from Harvard University. Maybe you saw or did not see that, and if you haven't, you really need to check out. I think there is 21 groups that the school supports their communities that supported Hamas. They sent a letter actually to the school administration in their support of Hamas, and I took that to heart and said, okay, well, so much for my holiday vlog. I'm going to have to do something on this. And when we think of our education, when our kids are being brainwashed to believe in our education system, I think it's time for us to really pause and think about who's running these institutions, the amounts of money they're making. A lot of that money goes back into the political soup, if you would say, for supporting various racists into governmental offices. George Soros, if you do not know who George Soros is, you need to do a very deep dive into him and what he's supporting. A lot of the district attorneys throughout the country that are basically not prosecuting and letting prisoners out, criminals out of jail, and not prosecuting violent crimes that would normally be 3, 5, 10, 20-year sentences, and just letting them walk. And in fact, in certain states like Illinois, there is no bail. I mean, you could just, what I mean by no bail is they can't get out. They're letting everybody out, no matter what the crime was. It's based upon if they think you may or may not show up in court. And depending on the judge, that's very subjective to who they will or will not let out. Just like the murders, going back to that year in Las Vegas of the 2 juveniles that ran over the bicyclists here, killing one of them. They made videos and they put that online. They shared it with their friends. Where is our youth, our younger generation? Where are they getting this information that all this is okay and all this is all right? It's coming from the communist left. We like to call them socialists, but they're not really socialists. Some things in socialism about providing for those who are in need, I think, is good. I think you should give them a hand up, not necessarily a hand out. And for those that have an illness, we need to go back to providing them treatment like we did 15, 20 years ago and trying to get them well and able to be on their own again. A lot of that money comes from charities, churches, organizations, and nonprofits that get donations. Here in Las Vegas, I just sent some money to a nonprofit for Thanksgiving to feed some of the people out on the street. That's a one-time thing. It's not really going to do anything but feed them for one day. But it's a start, and we need to find better ways of supporting these people and getting them on track and trying to ensure that they have a kind of a life that's important to them. But as we jump back to Hamas and we talk about Harvard and that type of thing, we need to really put a halt on all school activity. Parents, you need to jump up and say, stop. You need to stop sending your kids to Harvard. If your kid gets a scholarship to Harvard, it's not the same Harvard that it was 35, 40 years ago. It is basically a school that is run by communists that are teaching your kids to be or to support terrorist actions. If that would have happened here in the United States, if Hamas or any other terrorist group would have hit us here in the United States, how long would it have been for us Americans to come together and to demand a response from our government, whether it's on the Gaza Strip or wherever, Afghanistan or wherever, to take action against that group, to send out people to assassinate their leaders or the person that was in charge of putting that? What about the money Biden just sent back to Iran, which he's denying had any touch of this whole incident? But yet we know the missiles, the rockets, the guns, the support, the logistics has got to come from somewhere. It can come from Hamas in and of themselves. I mean, it's been quite a few years since they've attacked Israel or any of those types of things and had a chance to put it all together. But they don't have money on their own. Gaza is a poor, depressed little country right on the border of the Mediterranean with Israel. So where would they get the finances and the money to build up rockets and missiles and guns and training and so forth? When we think of those children on the Gaza Strip, which that the Gaza Strip has been run by Hamas. That is the government there, a terrorist organization. Their kids, who Hamas chooses, the teachers and what's being taught in the school, are taught to be terrorists. Yes, they are. They are taught to hate Israel. They are taught that the United States is, along with Israel, is a country to be destroyed and wiped off the face of the planet. When you think of this type of stuff, what's so undifferent to what Hamas was doing on the Gaza as to oppose what our government and our school boards and so forth throughout the United States are doing to our kids? How do you tear a country apart? You tear it apart by changing the youth of that country. We have a bunch of people coming over our border, or you do that, or you do a mix of that, and then you allow terrorist organizations like Black Lives Matter here in the United States, which did nothing for black people. The leaders of that organization stole the money and they bought multi-million-dollar houses. Then they're living the rich life, and yet we still support these people. Why do we do that? It's lunacy. Why do we give money to these people? Why do we support these people? Why do we keep putting and voting back the same state representatives and the same federal representatives, Congress and the Senate? Why do we get to let these people back into office and continue to support them? It's because these organizations who are funded by the government from these politicians receive money, and it's just a vicious circle. They get the money from the government, they take a portion of that to support whatever their cause is, and then they take that money and they throw it back into the election for that person that supports them. It's just a vicious loop. We need to stop it. I want to talk briefly about the election. I know I'm talking about a lot of stuff and not just Hamas right here, but this is all mixed together. And maybe I'll break it down bit by bit in the future and hit each one topics specifically. And this is more just globally a conversation with you about the truth and what's going on out there. But the government needs to be reformed here in the United States. The FBI, which is going after white supremacists in the country, our January 6th event in Washington, D.C., which they're calling the biggest, at least the Democratic Party, the biggest threat to our democracy. That was not a threat to democracy. None of them had any weapons, and the only person killed there was a female who was originally in the military, served our country, shot trying to crawl through a broken window of a door into an office area of Congress by a Capitol Police lieutenant who should have known better, and that's not what you do. You don't assassinate people climbing through windows when they're not threatening anything or anyone. He should have just used his authority and got her to slide back out through the window with the gun there. I mean, or whatever might have taken, or pepper spray or something else. He had a lot of choices. He didn't have to shoot her. But yet, where's that? Where's the justice in that? So that was the only person killed on January 6th. And yet the federal government's going after all these people. They're locked up for months and months, now years and years, for no reason. The video, 3,000 hours of video or whatever it is, 20,000 hours of video from this whole event. Once it seeks out, a lot of these people who have pled guilty because they couldn't afford it are going to be let out free, and their criminal background will be exonerated because the government overstretched its authority, hid evidence, and basically it was a political operation, a hack against conservatives. I'm going to save the elections coming up because that's the election year is coming up next year. But it doesn't matter what Republican gets voted to run for presidential office. A lot of districts throughout the United States, here in Las Vegas, where I live, chances of a Republican winning a position here in the state, as far as on the United States Senate or in Congress, is highly unlikely because of the way the voting is done in states. California was the test state. New York was the test state for the Democrats to develop their cheating system, and that's what they do. No, they're not on the cutting edge of doing what's right. They're manipulating and changing the laws based upon where they are in power in that state to cheat the elections and to cheat the voters and to cheat the public. So it doesn't matter who's running for president. I don't think, and I'm probably right, whoever the Republican is decided to be can never win the presidential election again. It just won't happen. The way the laws and the way the elections are done, votes are stolen, voter rolls are not cleaned and cleared up, and a great example of that is what happened in Georgia when they closed down the election halls. Hey, we're stopping the count for tonight. We're going to start back up tomorrow morning. And they pulled boxes from under tables, and this is all on video, pulled boxes from under tables and started to count them, and then they recounted the same votes again. It's on video. It was on YouTube for a while. I don't know if it's still there, but it's probably gone. But it happened. Where's the investigation on that? How about the truck driver who said he brought votes from New York into Pennsylvania, a truckload of votes. I don't know how big the truck is. Is it a semi truck or is it just a small little van type truck or whatever it might be? But still, brought a truck full of votes from New York, the state of New York, into Pennsylvania to be counted. What's up with that? Why are there so many votes in New York for Pennsylvania? And why do they need to be trucked over there? Where's the investigation on that? It just doesn't exist. So there's a lot of these inconsistencies all over the place. But going back to our universities and Hamas, we need to get our kids. Our kids are going to institutions, and that's exactly what they are. They're brainwashing institutions. As I've watched and observed the youth of our time today, they're consumed in themselves. They're consumed in their cell phones. They're consumed in their own personal self-centered rights, and zero of them care about anything about this country. They'll jump on any bandwagon that fits their needs, goals, desires, or what they've been brainwashed into believing. And it's going to take us time to flip that around, but we got to hit the stop button and say, hey, it's time for common sense. It's time for the truth to get back into American politics, back into Americans, and back into our youth who are going to be leading and running this country. Well, what's left of it 15 to 20 years from now. China is wrapped up in a lot of things here in the United States and throughout the world. They are being very quiet, very secretive, very behind the scenes, but they're manipulating and controlling a lot of the stuff that's going on. If you don't know, China, Iran, who backs Hamas, is the world's largest supporter of terrorist organizations. And I was just about to say the Soviet Union, but Russia, it is the Soviet Union again to some aspect. Russia, along with some other countries that are on the edge of this triad of allies and axis, if you want to say that, going back to World War II. The allies were the good guys, the Americans, the British, the French, and all those against the Axis powers, the Japan and the Germany and Italy and so forth. We're just repeating. The world's dividing itself between good and evil. The United States is being subverted by all of these powers to destroy itself from within through its own corrupt political system. And China's just sitting there laughing, waiting for everything to happen until they finally pull the trigger. What the trigger may be is their dominance, and that trigger will probably be when they decide it's time for Taiwan to join Communist China again. Could be a month from now, could be 5 years from now, could be 10 years from now. But I think China's just in a no-hurry timetable. They're just sitting back and they're just watching and manipulating the whole process throughout. And we're too dumb to see it because we're just tied up into our own personal selves and the corruption here in the United States, which is fundamentally supported by China and Russia and Iran. And we're just sitting here accepting it. So with that said, I think I hit more than definitely more than I wanted to hit, and I've been on longer than I definitely wanted to be on. So with that, we may follow up on more with this next week, or something else will pop up on our radar, which it always does, and we'll talk about that. How about the terrorist activity that might happen here in the United States with all those terrorists crossing our border? Uh, I've heard it's between 16 and 20,000 a day. That we know of. So the actual number could probably be 25 to 30,000 a day crossing the border. We've had probably somewhere between, estimates are saying 5 to 7 million. The actual estimate could probably be 7 to 10 million. People have illegally crossed the border in the United States over the last 2.5 years since Biden took office. And it's going to get worse. There's no stopping. They're going to keep coming. And what is that doing to our country and to you and your family and to our education system, our support system for us as citizens, taking care of us before we take care of the rest of the world? The United States is the most giving country in the world. We've always given to everybody else, and that's going to stop because they're all going to be here. They're all cheering. I heard stories of whole villages and whole towns in Central and South America, and some in Africa that have all just pulled up roots and are on the bandwagon to the United States because we're giving them everything they ever needed and wanted, and nobody's stopping it. That means we don't have a country anymore, right? It's gone. And this will be not only the melting pot, it'll be the stewing pot of the world. And it'll be bad for all of us. Anyway, we'll talk about that possibly next week or the weeks coming. And but look forward to the November 7th presentation where we're going to talk a little bit about holidays and armistice days and where the heck are the holidays going. You have a great week. And like my banner says at the top of if there's a topic you would like to talk about, of course you can always put it in the chat line, but the truth sometimes hurts. You may not like it, but the truth hurts. And it's time for us Americans to stand up and say enough is enough. Are we going to war with Hamas? Probably not. But I can almost guarantee you the support from our federal government, the support from a lot of those in this country, and will be disappearing over the next 1 to 6 months to the point where it's flipped 180 degrees. And instead of supporting Israel, we'll be tearing Israel down at every little thing we can. And that'll be the left, the communists, and all their cronies in all these organizations throughout the United States. If the FBI really wanted to do their job, they'd be going after some of these organizations and after people in our own government that are supporting terrorist activities throughout the United States and throughout the world. With that said, you have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Take care.